welcome back to Forza Horizon 4 with another showdown. I know it's a bit early after the recent one, it's very close together, but this is the showdown that I've been waiting for quite some time because I love super sedans. Okay? And Forza has an awful lot of them. And it just got a new addition, the Mercedes AMG G63S thing. It's a cool new Mercedes sedan, all-wheel drive, over 600 horsepower, and with it being very new to this game, I thought, how does it compare against other vehicles like the BMW M5, its sister car, the AMG GT4, or the likes of the Cadillac CTS-V, the Jag XFR-S. I mean, there's a whole load of other sedans out there, and there's also a bit of a wild card with the Lamborghini Urus, the world's fastest SUV, because the Lister isn't out yet and it's not in Forza. So, when you have 13 sedans and 1 SUV, which one would be the top of the table in a series of challenges starting out with the lap time testing? Now, I'm using rivals. Each vehicle had 5 laps to get the best time possible, and there would be an extra challenge, aka the Ferrari 360 challenge. This is a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive V8 sports car, and any sedan or SUV that beat the mid-engine sports car would gain an additional 10 points. Now that was quite tough. The 360 did a time of 1 minute .6, and not too many vehicles could touch it. The Charger Hellcat, representing one half of the American side, that other being the CTS-V from Cadillac, both of them face very difficult issues. You see, they had enormous power. The Hellcat was by far the most powerful car here, 707 horsepower, but having driven a Charger, personal experience on this one, having driven a Charger Daytona, I don't know what they used to attach the steering wheel with the steering rack. I think they might have used Play-Doh or silly putty, but it doesn't really steer. It's not very good, and it's very heavy, and then there's just so much power going to the rear wheels, it can't really keep it under control. So the American cars did struggle a bit, I'm not gonna lie, but what did not struggle, and this is come as a surprise to me, the AMG was incredibly fast. It was monstrously fast. I thought it'd be good, obviously, with being an S1 class, but it's fantastic. I thought, all-wheel drive, 4,500 pounds, one of the heaviest vehicles here, short of the SUV, and I think the Audi RS6. But it's just so good to drive. It doesn't feel like it weighs 2 and a bit tons. It feels like it weighs 1 and a bit tons. It's very, very good. And the results are dramatic if you look at the table. The AMG G63 scored a first place, beating the Ferrari by 0.2 of a second. That's immensely fast. The only other vehicle to beat the Ferrari was the Porsche Panamera in second place with a 1 minute 5.6. Very, very good times, those. Also, the BMW M5 and the AMG GT4 tied in lap time. They got the exact same time, which means I didn't actually know the final standings of the lap time until I finished the entire thing, because I based ties of the lap time off of the speed trap that we'll get to later on. I don't think I've ever tied a lap time test before, but there you go. And you know what? That wasn't even the only tie, because the Lamborghini Urus tied with the Cadillac CTS-V. And again, those were decided off of the speed trap. We had 2 ties in the first event. that tells you it's going to be a very, very close series. And also, I'd like to point out, the Alfa Romeo Quattrofoglio was much better handling than I realized. It was very good to drive. It doesn't have much power, just 505 horsepower. But it was very good handling. It even got 5th. It beat the likes of the RS6, which is also very good handling. It beat the Lamborghini. It was not quite on the same pace of the AMG and the BMW, but it wasn't far off. And this is a rear-wheel drive, and it was less than a second off, less than a tenth of a second off. That's pretty darn good. Now, speaking of pretty darn good, the same cannot be said for the Aussies. The Ford Falcon GT F350 thing, and the HSV Manu, because I can either use the GTS or the Manu, and which one am I going to pick? It's pretty obvious. Sadly, they were not very good. The Falcon did better than I thought for having less than 500 horsepower, but it was still in 12th place, and it did at least beat the Jag and the Holden, but the Australians did struggle quite a bit. Moving on to our second challenge, a good old-fashioned top speed run. Now, these are super sedans, so you imagine them being quite quick, and oh yeah, they were very, very quick. The slowest vehicle is, again, the HSV Manu. Very surprising, given how much power it has, 577, but it could only hit 183. But then there was the rest of the pack. There were some slackers like the Alpha doing a measly 200 miles an hour, tying with the Urus. Yes, the Urus SUV with the aerodynamics of a barn did hit 200 miles an hour. I don't fully understand that, but well played to the Urus. But there were a few other standouts, like the RS6 Avant hitting 206. The RS7, which struggled in the lap times, coming good 208 miles an hour. And then we have the first place is in another league, the AMG GT4. I didn't like its handling in the lap time, but in the top speed, it is hypercar fast. 218 miles an hour fast. Yeah, in a four-door sedan. That is Porsche 918 McLaren P1 territory in a four-door sedan. That's insane. That's faster. That's 7 miles an hour faster than the G63. That's faster than the BMW. Even the Charger, which struggled in the lap times immensely, that massive horsepower, still couldn't let it beat that AMG, although it does get second at 213, beating out the Infiniti Q50, an underdog. I didn't realize how quick that Infiniti was. At 212 miles an hour, it is basically a Nissan GTR stuck inside an Infiniti body, so it's very much an underdog on that. You don't think about it too much, but it can haul. It can do quite good. And again, the score table here, these are ridiculously fast speeds. Except for the Falcon and the Manu, everything exceeded 200 miles an hour. Even the 500 horsepower Alpha could hit 200 miles an hour. I will be honest, I was expecting a little better for some. The Falcon, yes, it doesn't have much power, it's 473, but I was really hoping that would hit 200, and the Manu, it has almost 600 horsepower, and it was slower than a Alpha with 52 horsepower less. Yeah. So we move on to another test. This one testing mid-range and initial acceleration, the half-mile run. Now I could do a quarter mile, but that would really favor the all-wheel drive cars. The half-mile gives a bit more of a chance of that being a pure straight-line speed test. And try as they might, the rear-wheel drive cars could just not keep up. The best chance they had was arguably the Charger Hellcat, just because of the sheer power, and while it struggles to get off of the line, it just doesn't have the time. It gets bogged down so much on the launch, it doesn't have enough time to make it up. It's the fastest by far at the end, but it can't make it up, and as a result, every rear-wheel drive car is slower, although not for the sake of trying. The CTS-V, the Charger, did put up a good fight, almost beating the Urus. Yes, they did get out-dragged by an SUV, but it is an all-wheel drive Porsche Panamera tuned SUV. Which, fun fact, the Panamera is 0.4 of a second faster than the SUV with its own engine, so I guess that's just the weight going into effect in that one. Now, again, the AMG G63, it's not the most powerful. It is one of the heaviest, excluding the SUV, and it won. By a bit. Now, I should say, the top four are all very close, actually. First, second, and third are separated by less than a second. Less than 1/10 of a second, even that. M5 gets 16,850, GT4 gets 16,884. These are very, very quick times, and all of them are hitting almost 150 miles an hour in the half mile. This is absolutely nuts. RS6 Avant, a bit of an underdog on this one, really doing the estate proud by showing the estate is superior to the SUV with a very good 17.6 in the standing half. And then there were the rest. The Jag XFR-S does good to beat the Maloo and the Falcon towards the bottom, but they just don't have the traction, and they're just a bit too heavy to compete with their rivals. We move on to the final test, a speed trap. Now, we're not using the super twisty one, we're using a still twisty, but more medium speed, high speed focused on the north of the map. And guess who's pretty good on this one? The Germans were absolutely dominant, except for one car. The Alfa Quattrofoglio was fantastic. It has no top speed, it has no acceleration, but it is just it is brilliant through the corners. So brilliant, it beats the BMW M5, the GT4, the Porsche Panamera. The only thing it loses out to is the AMG. It got second place overall. That's, I mean, sure, it's about as reliable as a Soviet news network, but it is a freaking great handling car, and the speed trap proves it getting a second place. I was surprised by that. I was also very surprised with the RS6 Avant, because it's a big, you know, it's very big, just in size. It's the only thing bigger than it is the Lamborghini, and it was surprisingly quick. It was very much in the middle of the pack, which means, yes, it does get beaten by the likes of the Panamera, like the CTS-V, but it beats its fellow RS7. It beats the Charger Hellcat. I mean, it's a very impressive machine. And I should say about that CTS-V, the CTS-V also very, very good. One thing that wasn't good, and it surprised me, the Infiniti Q50 Rouge. I was expecting a lot better, and it just did not deliver. It could only get 11th place. And I was very confused by that, because it was very good on the track, more mildly good. It had good acceleration, has good top speed, and it just could not put it all together for the speed trap. I was very surprised on how it's way down in 11th place. I mean, if you look at the table here, it's in 11th place. It gets beaten by the Charger, the rear-wheel drive Charger that's as big as a mountain. I was very surprised. It does at least beat the Lamborghini Urus, so it's not beaten by an SUV, which the same cannot be said for the Australians. The Australians are not faring well. The Jag XFR-S does deliver a very good handling performance, sneaking its way into the top 10, again, beating the Infiniti. A Jag XFR-S just beat the Infiniti on there. I was very surprised by that. The AMG was miles ahead, 85.5 miles an hour. The only car that really had an answer for it was the Alfa at 85.2, and everything else, apart from that, were actually very, very close. I mean, we had a lot of 84s, tons of 83s, so This is a very, very close field if you exclude the Alpha and the AMG in this situation. Which brings us on to the final tally. Mercedes got a 1-2 here, yep. With the G63 coming home in first, winning 3 events. And the AMG GT4 winning 1 event. Which, considering there was only 4 events, it means Mercedes won every single event between the two cars. It kind of sounds like another series that was normally goes on right now, that they race against other teams with, and it's not very interesting because they always win. Anywho, that was a hypothetical situation, but third place is the Porsche, and this is the closest finish we have ever had. While first place with the G63 may be quite a ways up with 300 points, third place is a tie. I don't think I've ever had a tie, ever, while making one of these, much less for third place. And the way I decided between the M5 and the Panamera was whichever one got the best lap time. And the Panamera got 0.2 of a second faster on the dot. So, it got the W. Or at least the podium. While the F90 M5 was relegated to a 4th place, but, 4th place is still pretty darn good in this field. The Infiniti does well getting into 5th, let down by its abysmal speed trap score, getting beaten by the Jag of all things, which is way down in 12th overall. The fastest of the Americans would be 8th place, one of the only rear-wheel drive cars to actually beat an all-wheel drive car. And that one is 2 positions ahead of its next rival, the Cadillac CTS-V, which is down in 10th, although still a respectable showing for getting in the top 10. The Charger gets its 8th by raw speed, really that 2nd place in the top speed run, makes up immensely for the lap time and speed trap results, which were not the best, shall we say. But that 2nd place gives it a bit of an edge over its American brethren. Now, I said the Charger is one of the only vehicles to beat an all-wheel drive car, and that is correct, but it's not the only one, because the other one is the Alfa Romeo Quadrifoglio, I think. I still can't pronounce it, but the Alfa Giulia is fantastic. It was not very good in the top speed department or acceleration department, not at all. In fact, it's as fast as an SUV with the aerodynamics of a small office building, but it is breathtaking through the corners. It got 2nd place. It beat every car but the Mercedes G63 in the speed trap, which was a huge surprise for me, considering it has just 500 horsepower. We're dealing with cars that are 200 horsepower more than it in some cases. So I think the Alfa really punched above its weight class for being so down on power and being from a traditionally supercar industry and not a sports sedan industry. Now, we do have to bring up the elephant in the room, aka our poor friends from Down Under, who did not fare too well, but we're glad they showed up. 13th and 14th respectively for the Falcon and the Maloo. I love both of them. The Falcon was a bit of an underdog, having less than 500 horsepower, but so I never expected that to do quite well. However, the Maloo disappointed me. It really did, because it has more power than a fair few of these cars. It's right up there in the power department, and it's right up there at the weight department, and it just can't use its power on the launch, and it doesn't have the handling for the corners. It did not do well, which does make me a bit sad, but that's just how this world works sometimes. So, if I can offer some conclusion advice for this, if you will. If you want a pure super saloon, buy German. They scored the top 4 places. But if you're me, I would get the Alpha, because it's far better handling. It still hits 200 miles an hour, and it's the best looking car here by far. So, here's a top tip, I guess. If you want the best super saloon, super sedan in the world. Get the 7th best super saloon, super sedan in the world. But that will be it for this episode of Forza Horizon 4. We'll be back with more.